Om Sadashiva
Shivasamarambha
Shankaracharya
Shankaracharya Asmadacharya Paryantam Vande Guru Parampara
Om Sahana Bhavatu
Om Sahana
Sahana
Bhavatu
Bhunaktu
Sahana Bhunaktu
Sahaviryam Karvavahai
Sahaviryam Karvavahai Tejasvinavadhitamastu Ma Vidvishavahai
Om Shanti
Om Shanti
Shanti
Shanti Shanti.
Okay, so we will continue with where we left off. We are now on the 30th verse, chapter 6. Shri Bhagavanuvacha
Shri Bhagavanuvacha
Yo mam pashyati sarvatra
Yo mam pashyati sarvatra
sarvam cha mayi pashyati
sarvam cha mayi pashyati
tasyaham na pranashyami
tasyaham na pranashyami
sachame na pranashyati.
sacha me na pranashyati.
Okay, so I'll just mute you. Yeah. Yaha mam pashyati, the one who sees me, is just the word meanings. Sarvatra cha, everywhere. That is the first part of it. The one who sees me everywhere. And the second part is Sarvam Mayi Pashyati, sees everything in me. So two qualifications. He sees me everywhere and sees everything in me. What happens to me? Tasya aham na pranashyami. For him, I am never lost. I never disappear. And cha and saha na pranashati. Me saha me na pranashati. He is not lost. He does not disappear for me. So this is a brief introduction to bhakti, slight variation. And yo mam pashyati sarvatraha. Shankara says mam has to be understood as the atma of everybody. Mam, me, has to be understood as sarvasya atmanam, the atma of everyone. So the one who sees this atma in all bodies, that is the meaning. The one who sees me as the atma in every body, that's number one. Secondly, sarvam mayi pashyati. He sees all the bodies in me. So he sees me in every body, sarva vyapi, everywhere. And he sees everything in me. He sees all the bodies in me. So the idea being conveyed is very similar to the previous verse. What is he saying? Knowing or appreciating that I, the Atma, I am the Atma, knowing that Atma is none other than me. He says this is the greatest form of bhakti. The most uttama bhakti, the most superior bhakti is the awareness that I myself am the Lord. Self-awareness as God awareness. This appreciation of Atma everywhere, in and through everybody. And also knowing that the Atma which is in every body is in my body also. And further, not just knowing that Atma is in every body and Atma is in my body, but the further understanding that that very same Atma is my real nature. And therefore extending further that I am that Atma which is everywhere and everybody is in me who am the Atma. So Sarvatra Atma Darshanam, seeing Atma everywhere, seeing myself everywhere is the same as Sarvatra Ishvara Darshanam, seeing Ishvara everywhere. And this is the highest form of bhakti. And as you can understand, this knowledge, this highest form of bhakti is based on Atma-jnanam, is based on self-knowledge. And therefore, this highest form of bhakti is only possible through Atma-jnanam. Any form of bhakti that is practiced before you have got Atma-jnanam, remember, is restricted to a Lord who is limited to a place and limited with a particular form. And therefore, he is not a sarva-vyapi Lord. And therefore, any form of bhakti practiced before Atma-jnanam is the inferior form of bhakti. Because that Lord with a form and in a particular place, that Lord is subject to arrival and departure. Which means what? That I am seeing the Lord as a finite entity. Okay, such a form of bhakti, we are not saying that it is useless. It is a wonderful form of bhakti actually, but only initially. It is apara bhakti, dvaita bhakti, bheda bhakti. Apara bhakti, lower bhakti, dvaita bhakti, bhakti with duality, bheda bhakti, bhakti with differences. These are all personal gods. And a personal god can never be the real Bhagavan. And he says later, Krishna says later, that personal god can never be the real Bhagavan. We'll come to that later. So here, yaha mam sarvatra pashyati, that jnani who, and you must remember the previous verse where it said that he sees the Atma everywhere. This jnani sees the Atma everywhere. And now Krishna says that jnani sees Ishvara everywhere, sees the me, Ishvara everywhere. If you combine the two verses, what are you saying? Seeing Atma everywhere is seeing the Lord everywhere. Therefore, Atma Darshanam is nothing but Ishvara Darshanam. Bhagavan is there in every body. So every shariram, every body, as what? As the consciousness principle. And one doesn't have to look very far. Whenever I feel the sentiency of my body, whenever I feel that my body is alive, I am experiencing Ishvara only. I don't have to close my eyes to see Ishvara. The fact that I am experiencing that my body is alive, I'm experiencing the sentiency of my body, it means that I'm experiencing the very life principle, the very consciousness principle, which is nothing other than Atma. Such a person, he sees the Ishvara in everyone. And here he says, he sees the reverse also. He sees everyone in Ishvara. So if it is this formless Ishvara, which is the highest form of Ishvara, which is being glorified, then the question will arise, why do we then worship forms? Why do we start with, that Ekaropa Ishvara? The answer is that the mind in its unprepared state cannot appreciate the formless Ishvara. Therefore, until the mind is refined, until it is made subtle through jnanam, through regular shravanam and mananam, until then you require an Ekaropa Ishvara, you require a formed God, a God with form. Once the mind is refined enough, once it is prepared mind, then you jump to the next stage. Understanding the Lord with form cannot be the real form. So there is an Upanishad, Dhyana Upanishad, which says, Yat chakshushana pasyati, yena chakshugamshi pasyati, tadeva brahmatam vidvam vidhi, nedam yadidam upasate. Yat chakshushana pasyati, that which your eyes cannot perceive, yena chakshugamshi pasyati, that because of which your eyes perceive. Very, very beautiful statement. That Ishvara, the eyes cannot perceive. But it is because of that Ishvara, the eyes can perceive. That Ishvara, your eyes cannot perceive. But because of that Ishvara, your eyes can perceive whatever else they are perceiving. Tad eva brahmatvam vidhi. Know that that alone is Brahman. Which alone? that principle by which your eyes perceive. Know that that principle alone is Brahman. Na idam yadidam upasate. Not that formed God which you are worshipping here. Upasate. You are worshipping a formed God that can never be the real God. And therefore, that formless God, that Arupa Ishvara, is the Karanam of everything. He alone is the real one. And the Jnani appreciates that Ishvara where everywhere. And appreciates also that everybody is in that Ishvara. What is the benefit? If you see Ishvara as the very essence, as pervading every single Shariram, including your Shariram, the advantage is what? Ishvara is never far away from you. You are always with Ishvara because wherever you see, it is either your body, somebody else's body, all Sharirams have Ishvara in them. And therefore, Ishvara is always with you. Okay. With this vision, there is no question of Ishvara suddenly showing up, as a special figure with a flash of light and sound and lightning, and then showing the hand and saying, okay, I give you a boon. That Ishvara is not the Ishvara we are talking about. This all-pervading Sarvagata entity is not subject to arrival and not subject to departure. He is always there. And what is always there, what is everywhere, can never arrive and can never go. And tasya, for such a jnani devotee, aham na pranashyami. I, Ishvara, will never disappear. I will always be with him. I will never be lost sight of. Why? Because this jnani, he knows that he is Ishvara. And one never loses sight of oneself. Therefore, how can this jnani lose sight of Ishvara? Okay, so what is the advantage of this? As long as Ishvara is with me always, as long as I am Ishvara, no human being can threaten me. You will never get blackmailed. The most common blackmail is from your spouse. If you do like this, I'll be with you. If you don't do like this, I will go away. All this creates emotional dependencies. But with Ishvara with you permanently, that dependency has been eliminated. You will never again be emotionally vulnerable. It is not that you will not give affection. You will give affection, but you will not you will never beg for affection. You will enjoy the affection if it is given without conditions. But conditional affection is no affection, and therefore you will never be emotionally vulnerable again. Not only that, he says the jnani will never lose sight of the fact that he, the jnani, is nobody but I, the Atma, I, the Ishvara. And therefore, sachamena pranashyati. He, the jnani, does not disappear for me. He does not go away from me, which means he and I can never be separated. He and I are always one. And in the next chapter, Krishna will say, Jnani tu atmaiva me matam. That jnani, I consider, is not different from me. So what is the benefit of this kind of meditation, this kind of nididhyasanam? You become a great bhakta of the Lord. And if you can see the word Atma of the previous verse, Sarvabhutastham Atmanam Sarvabhutani Cha Atmani. Atma was used in verse number 29 very subtly. Krishna has replaced that word Atma with Yo Mam Pashyati Sarvam Chamai Pashyati. The word Atma has been replaced by the word me, Mam, indicating that Atma and me are referring to the same entity, Ishvara. And from here you draw a corollary. The term Jiva also refers to the same Ishvara. The term Jivatma and Paramatma, Shastram uses to point out not that there is any essential difference, but to point out that there is a difference in upadhis. And upadhi, any case, is mithya. And therefore, from the satyam point of view, from the paramarthika point of view, Jiva, Ishvara are the same. But from Vyavaharika point of view, Upadhis are there, and therefore from the Vyavaharika point of view, there is a difference between Jiva and Ishvara. They have different sets of Upadhis. One is finite Upadhi, one is infinite Upadhi. And hence this verse, it brings out Jiva, Jagat, Ishvara, non-difference. That there is no difference at all between Jiva and Jagat and Ishvara. And that all three are really mithya. What is the Satyam? Only Atma or Brahman is Satyam. This is the core teaching, the essential teaching of all scriptures, of all Vedas, of Bhagavad Geeta, of all Prakarana Granthas. The teaching is only one. And you may have heard that teaching before, especially those who attended the TTC. Brahma Satyam Jagad Mithya Jivo Brahmaiva Naparaha. Brahman is Satyam, Jagat is Mithya, Jivaha and Brahman, they are the same, they are not different. But of course, Shankara captures this in a beautiful sloka. Now this Brahma Satyam Jagat Mithya Jiva Brahmaiva Naparaha actually is half of the sloka, which Shankara says in the beginning. So he says, Ardha Shlokena Pravaksyami. In half a sloka, I will tell you. Ardha Shlokena Pravaksyami. In half a sloka, I will tell you. Yad Uktam Grantha Kotibihi. That which has been said in crores of textbooks. What is that? Brahma Satyam Jagan Mithya Jivo Brahmaiva Naparaha. First line is very beautiful. Ardha Shlokena Pravaksyami Yaduktam Grantha Kotibihi Brahma Satyam Jagan Mithya Jivo Brahmaiva Naparaha. This is the vision which eliminates the difference between Jiva and Ishvara. And therefore the Jiva is capable of saying, Idam Sarvam Aham Asmi. All this I alone am. And the Jnani therefore should be able to say without any hesitation at all, I see the Lord everywhere. And if he is a real Jnani, he should also be able to say with equal amount of conviction, what? I see myself everywhere. Why? Because he sees the Lord everywhere is equal to I see myself everywhere. If Lord is equal to myself. That is the essence of that verse. But as a Jnani, he will say this to himself. The mental chatter, what we call, our mental dialogue should be that everything I am. But don't go and say it publicly, because Gita itself, Krishna himself advised. Why? Buddhi bhedam na janayet. Chapter number, which chapter? Buddhi bhedam na janayet.
18.
Nope. Buddhi bhedam na janayet is chapter 3. Verse number 25, 26, something like that. Do not disturb the minds of those people who are not ready, says Krishna. And therefore don't go and tell the world that is Ishvara. They will probably lock you up in a lonely bin. Okay, so tell it to yourself, tell it to the people who are in this class, tell it to similar people, but for the world, be a miserable jiva. Okay, now we will look at the 31st verse, which we will chant. Sarvabhutastam yomam.
Sarvabhutasthetam yo mam.
Sarvabhutassthitam yomam.
Sarvabhutassthitam yo mam.
Bhajatyekatvamasthitah.
Bhajate tattvamastitah.
Sarvatha vartamanopi.
Sarvata vartamanopi.
Sayogi mai vartate.
Sayogi mai vartate.
Okay, I'll just mute you all again. All right. So, bhajatyekatvam astitah. The last word of the first line you break up into Asthitaha, the one who has attained or understood Ekatvam, this vision of oneness, and therefore only Yo Mam Bhajati. So Bhajat Ekatvam is Bhajati Ekatvam Asthitaha. Asthitaha you take first. Ekatvam Asthitaha, the one who has attained this vision of oneness. What does he do? Yaha Mam Bhajati. He worships me. And who am I? Sarva Bhuta Sthitam. I am present in Sarva Bhutams. In all beings I am present. And Sahayogi, that Nididhyasika, that meditator, that Dhyana yogi, Mai Vartate, he abides in me, even though Sarvatha api Vartamanaha, engaged in hundreds of other duties. Okay. The first line is a repetition, Sarvabhuta Sthitam Yomam Bhajati Ekatvam Astitaha. The idea conveyed by that, remember, is exactly the same idea conveyed by the last two verses, 29 and 30. So just remember that. Okay. But, and therefore Shankara doesn't make a commentary on that. Why I said that is because Shankara does not comment on this verse at all, because it's a repetition of the idea conveyed in verse number 29 and 30, which he has explained in great detail in his Bhashya, which we have conveyed to you through our discussions. But there are some other teachers, Acharyas, who take that word Ekatvam Asthitaha to mean being established in the vision of Jivatma Paramatma Aikyam. And therefore, idea being conveyed is the same. What happens to this meditator? He drops the idea that he is a Jiva and he takes on the idea that he is Brahman. And after that, Yaha Mam Bhajati, he worships me, the formless Ishvara. Okay. Therefore, an Ajnani's expression of devotion, the Jnani is also a devotee, Ajnani is also a devotee. Ajnani Bhakta is a devotee. The Jnani Bhakta is also a devotee. But the Jnani Bhakta's devotee, he is saying, appears as what? Appears as an appreciation of the very nature of Ishvara, which is none other than his own nature. And therefore he says, Mam Bhajati, worships me. And how does he worship? The very worship is the understanding that I am everywhere and everything is in me. That expression, I am everywhere, which came where Yomam Pashyati Sarvatra, Sarvam Chamai Pashyati. That very understanding conveyed by that line, that is the expression of the Jnani's Bhakti. And it is the highest form of Bhakti. Therefore, he says, Sarva Bhuta Sthitam. The Lord is present in every living being as the very consciousness principle and as the very existence principle, because of which alone that living being has got life. And therefore, this Jnani, with this vision of Advaita, knowing that he is not different from me, he worships me. And for this worship, unlike the Ajnani's worship consists of several actions, right? He does a puja, he puts flowers, he puts water, he prays. All these things are there for the Ajnani. There is a special puja for him. Special different acts are there for his devotion. His bhakti consists of kriya, devotion, different actions. While this Jnani, he worships me, but for his worship, there is only this understanding. Yoma pashyati sarvatra, sarvam chamai pashyati. There is no special karma required. And that is why it is said that when you have understood this jnanam, you don't need to do any karma. And therefore you can become a sannyasi, because sannyasis do not do any form of regular worship. Right? And if you say that, okay, but I went to this matham, and then I saw devotees come and they are doing puja, remember that when in a matham, the mathadhikari does puja, it's a compromised practice for the sake of Loka Sangraham, for the sake of the devotees. But as far as the Mathadhikari is concerned, the sannyasi is concerned, there is no ritual puja at all. Why? That is not required. His puja is in the very form of the Jnana Yajna. That I am everything and everything is in me. That understanding, that thought, that Nididhyasanam is very puja. And that is 24/7/365. So when he does physical puja, ritual puja, it is not for his own sake. It is meant for somebody else's sake. And that is why we say that for the Ajnani, there is always a ritualistic puja. The Jnani may or may not do the puja. If he does the puja, it's for somebody else's sake, not for himself. Then you look at the other line, second line, Sarvatha Varthamanopi. So Sarvatha can be taken as whatever he does, whatever his lifestyle. Vartaman is current, present. So Sarvatha Varthamana Api, whatever his current lifestyle, which means that even though he does not practice any regular puja, parayanam, etc., as Ajnanis do in their puja room, and even though he does not perform any rituals because he has become a sannyasi, like Sandhya Vandanam, Agnihotram, etc., he may not perform. And therefore, externally, he may appear like a non-religious person because he does not do anything. No puja, no prayer, nothing. And that is why very often people say that when you become a Vedantic, people think that you have lost bhakti, you have lost devotion. But actually, the bhakti has become very refined. And a very, very refined and very subtle bhakti is always invisible. So the Vedantic's bhakti is avyakta bhakti, subtle bhakti, sukshma bhakti. It is so subtle that it is not visible to the others. And therefore, it is never expressed in the regular form in which the worldly people express. And therefore, he says, Sarvatha Vartamana Api, whatever be the lifestyle that such a Jnani has chosen, whether he is male, whether he is female, whether he is in Brahmacharya ashram, whether he is in Grihastha ashram, whether he is in Vanaprastha ashram, whether he is a businessman, whether he is a soldier, an army officer, whatever is your profession, the activity does not matter at all. Why? Because internal transformation has taken place. Internal sannyasa has taken place. And therefore, Sayogi, that yogi, and that Sayogi, Shankara defines as Samyak Darshi. Samyak Darshi means the one who is got the right knowledge. So the right Advaitic knowledge coming out of Shastram he has got, such a Jnani, who therefore is established in that knowledge, who is a Jnana Nishtha. What happens to him? Mayi Vartate. He is in me. And Shankara defines Mayi Vartate as Nitya Mukta Eva. He is forever free. Because he is no other than me. Therefore, he need not go to temples or to see Ishvara. Because for him, Ishvara is not confined to a temple. Okay? So there is a very nice story. I don't know if you've heard it. There's one sannyasi jnani. Sannyasis are basically people, at least the real sannyasis. Okay, there are some sannyasis who have ashrams and all that, but something called a parivajaka sannyasi, who is not supposed to have any place of his own, who is not even supposed to sleep in one place more than one night. So we're talking about such a sannyasi. So jnani sannyasi, he and such people, they sleep wherever they can find. They eat whatever bhiksha is given to them, and they sleep wherever there is place. And it's quite common for them to sleep in temples because in India, a lot of temples or small temples are there which are open, excepting that the shrine is closed. The temples themselves are open from all sides. So this Jnani, he had finished his food and all that, and he was sleeping. So he had slept off in a temple in front of the what is it called, the door to the inner sanctum. And there's a Shiva temple, okay. So the inner sanctum contained what? A Shiva lingam. All right. So then what happened? This gentleman, he slept off. Then the priest came. It was time for the evening puja. So the priest came and he saw that the leg of the Jnani was pointing towards the Shiva lingam. So he came to the Jnani and told him that what you are doing is not correct. Of course, he didn't know he was a Jnani. He thought he was just some sannyasi sleeping there. So he said, you should not be doing that because your leg is pointing towards the Lord. So the Jnani said, okay, tell me, where should I point my leg? So he said, point it away from the sanctum, the Shivalingam. So Jnani changed his position and the leg pointed elsewhere. The story goes that the moment the leg was pointed elsewhere, one Shivalingam came up right next to his leg. So the priest was disturbed. So he said, okay, you point elsewhere. And slowly, the Jnani pointed his leg all over the place. Everywhere where the leg pointed, the Shivalingam came up immediately. What is the significance? That the Lord is everywhere. So finally the priest understood that this was a Jnani and that wherever his leg was pointing, the Jnani's vision was what? Everybody and everything is in me. The Lord was everywhere. It's only a story, but this is what we should also be doing, right? This is the right stage of Jnana. When you go to a temple, the Lord is not inside the sanctum. The Lord is there everywhere. If you don't go to a temple, also it is okay. But don't use that as an excuse not to go to a temple. As a grihastha, you have a duty for, as a role leader, as a role model. For that, you have to go to the temple so that your neighbors, your wife, your children, your relatives all know that this is the role which is to be played. Okay, so this is what is the essence of the story, that Lord is there everywhere. And Shankara points out in his commentary, actually in the commentary on the previous verse, that there is something called paroksha jnanam, which is indirect knowledge, right? Not pratyaksha, not direct knowledge. For example, you see some smoke on the mountain. What is the inference? That there is fire on the mountain. That anumanam that you make, that there is fire on the mountain, is a knowledge which is inferred, and that not direct knowledge. That inferred knowledge is called paroksha jnanam. But if you go to the mountain and see the fire, that has the effect of converting this paroksha jnanam into pratyaksha jnanam, directly experienced. So directly experienced pratyaksha jnanam is called aparoksha jnanam. So two important words. Paroksha jnanam, something which is known indirectly. Now, for example, Brahman is there. That is paroksha jnanam. I am Brahman. That is aparoksha jnanam. Now the question is, can Ishvara be pratyaksha? No. Why can Ishvara not be pratyaksha? Because if Ishvara is pratyaksham, then he would be another object, because only anatma can be pratyaksha, right? Therefore, if you could see Ishvara, then he would be anatma, and you anyway are atma. So you would be satyam, and Ishvara would be anatma, mithya. But because Ishvara cannot be anatma, that is the reason why he can never be pratyaksha, why he can never be an object of perception. So we as Vedantins, we acquire the knowledge of Ishvara through Shastram. And this belief that Ishvara exists is always paroksha jnanam, indirect knowledge, because we have never seen Ishvara. The knowledge that there exists an entity called Ishvara is paroksha jnanam. And I have understood through Shravanam and Mananam that Ishvara's nature is the same as my nature. That understanding is also paroksha jnanam. Why? Because I have understood through Shastram. Right? Now, what happens in Nididhyasanam? In Nididhyasanam, that knowledge which I have gained, that my nature is the same as Ishvara's, that knowledge is driven down into my subconscious. It is assimilated. All the viparita bhavanas are destroyed, and that knowledge is completely assimilated. That assimilated knowledge that I am Ishvara or I am Brahman, that becomes aparoksha jnanam. That is called jnananishtha. Okay. Okay. Now, therefore, Shankara says, for such a jnani, there is no obstacle to moksha at all. And this is being conveyed here in this verse. So, whatever one does in terms of your profession or in terms of your lifestyle, it is irrelevant after this jnanam because you will never be away from Atma, whatever you do. And that state of never being away from Atma, always remembering that I am Atma, that is called Jnana Nishtha. That is what is the ultimate result of Nididhyasana. Okay. Any questions? Okay. So we'll presume that everybody's understood everything properly. We'll go to the last verse for today, 32nd verse. Atmaupamyena sarvatra
आत्मौपम्येन सर्वत्र
samam pashyati yorjuna
समं पश्यति योऽर्जुन
sukham va yadi va dukkham
सुखं वा यदि वा दुःखम्
sayogi paramo matah.
योगी परमो मतः
So, Atmau Pamyena. Atma Upamyena. Upamya is an example, a standard. Atma here means myself, reflexive pronoun. Atmau Pamyena, keeping myself as the example or as the standard for judgments. Saha yogi, that yogi, yaha pashyati, who sees what? Samam, he sees as alike. Sukham va yadi va dukkham. That person who sees pleasure and pain as the same, sarvatra, in everybody. Mataha paramam is considered to be the greatest. So, now if you look at the previous verse, the second line said, Sarvatha vartamanopi sa yogi mai vartate. He will never be away from me. Sarvatha vartamanopi, whatever he does. So doubt can arise. How can Krishna say whatever he does? What if he, becomes a terrorist? What if he murders people? Will Krishna still say, Sayogi mai vartate? Will he still be with Ishvara? So that is the answer. And that answer is and that this verse is answering that particular doubt. What is the doubt? If that yogi, he does harmful actions, will he still be with Ishvara? And the doubt is being answered here. Krishna is saying, as a jnani, your mind encompasses the entire universe. Why? Because as a jnani, you are saying, everything is in me. Sarvam cha mai pashyati. Everything is in me, you have said. And therefore, your mind is no longer identified only with your own body. Every single body in this world, every single shariram in this world, whether it be Manusya shariram or whether it be animal shariram or insect shariram, they are all sharirams. And the jnani's mind expands to such an extent that he identifies with all the bodies. He knows I am the Atma, not only behind this body of mine, but I am the Atma behind all these bodies. And therefore, in a sense, all these bodies, whether it be the dog body, the lion body, the giraffe body, all these bodies become my bodies, my hands, and my legs. And therefore, how then can a harmful action arise from the jnani? Because hurting anybody is like hurting himself. And therefore, this jnani becomes a very embodiment of compassion, sympathy, and ahimsa. And he is capable of sensing the pain of everybody. So don't think that becoming jnani is you are insensitive to pain. Becoming a jnani, before becoming jnani, what happened? Only your pain hurt you. Your pain you could sense. But after becoming a jnani, you can sense the pain of everyone. This jnani cannot cause pain to anybody because he thinks of all the bodies as in him, as in himself. He knows that he is the Atma in all the bodies, and therefore he will not cause pain to any single shariram. But if at all any shariram has got pain, then immediately the jnani has to go to alleviate that pain. To help that person, the jnani has to go. He has no choice anymore. This has become his own nature. And that is why Krishna says, Atma Upama Sarvatra Pasyati. Atma Upama. Upama means a measure, an example, a measure for comparison. So he looks at every living being from the point of looking at his own self. At every single shariram, he looks as if it is his own shariram because he is the Atma in everyone. Therefore, taking himself as a standard, he looks at every living being as non-different from himself. This particular, it's a beautiful little value which Swami Dhyana calls value of a value. You know, if you really understand that you do not like any pain to yourself, from there you should be able to extrapolate that because I don't like pain, I also know that nobody else likes pain. And all the trouble in this world is because this value has not been digested fully. And therefore, most people have one standard of behavior for themselves and another standard of behavior for other people. There is subjectivity. And this is, they're everywhere, right? For example, most mothers have one standard of behavior for their daughter and another one for the daughter-in-law. Why? And this is common across, especially in India, this is very common. You expect some things to be done by your daughter and you expect a totally different set of things from your daughter-in-law. So it's an incorrect appreciation of that particular rule, right? For example, I like sports channel, let us say. And therefore, irrespective of whoever wants to watch TV, the sports channel remains throughout in my TV. Everybody should watch sports because I like sports. And therefore, the Jnani does not have this kind of double standard. He is objective. He follows the universal value that what I do not want others to do to me, I should not do to others. Very simple. If I do not want to be hurt, understand that nobody wants to be hurt. Therefore, I should not be the cause of hurt for everybody, for anybody. And therefore, Atma Upamya, keeping yourself as the very basis for any decision, is a very important context, is a concept. Atma here, remember, doesn't mean Satchitananda Atma. Atma is a reflexive pronoun, indicating myself. Keeping myself as the standard, I should make any decision. If you are going to take, for example, if you are working, you're a boss, let us say, and you've got subordinates and somebody does something wrong, then you're going to take some action. Before taking the action, Atma Upamya. What does it mean? Reverse the roles mentally. See whether if he was the boss and if you were the subordinate, would you like the action that is being proposed? And therefore, always use compassion first. And that's why in our culture we have Sam, Dam, Bheda, Danda. Danda is the last course of action. First Sam, Dam, and Bheda. Dharma ignorance is never a problem for most people. Dharma implementation is. And therefore, you have to have a value for the value. Value like ahimsa, astheya. They have to have so much of a overriding value for you that it will become not possible for you to compromise on that value. And that's why Krishna said in an earlier chapter, Swadharmam, Swadharme Nidanam Shreyaha. Better to lose your life than to compromise on Swadharmam, your essential values. And towards whom should you have these values? Sarvatra, Sarvabhuteshu, towards all living beings. And therefore, before eating chicken for breakfast, what should you ask yourself? How would I like it if the chicken ate me for breakfast? See that? Then you have got the value correctly. And therefore, samam pasyati yorjuna, he does not consider his body as something special, as something more important than other bodies. He is free from raga dvesha. He is able to see all situations objectively for what they are. And therefore, sukham va yadiva dukham, whether it be happiness or whether it be sorrow, he is able to see things objectively. Right? Everybody has different raga dvesha. So most fathers who have teenagers know that teenager may have raga for some terribly loud music, but you will have dvesha for it. Therefore, raga dvesha differs from person to person. But here Krishna is saying that there is one common raga dvesha. What is that? Raga for sukham and dvesha for dukham. That is common to all beings. And therefore, Jnani should know that all beings like sukham, all beings dislike dukham. And that's why he says you should view it with yourself as the basis, because you want to be happy and you want to avoid sorrow. You have raga for sukham, you have dvesha for dukham. Understand that everybody has the same raga dvesha, and therefore you can never be the cause of sorrow to others. On the other hand, the jnani will try to give happiness to others. Try is a very important word, especially in family circumstances. Because remember that you can only try to give happiness to your family member. And try is important because giving happiness to others can never be viewed as a duty in the light of the Shastra. Why? Because somebody's happiness is ultimately dependent only upon his own mindset. You can do what is tangible. Take care in sickness. If hungry, give food. If he is in discomfort, try to make him comfortable. And there's one beautiful book text called Niti Shatakam, written by one gentleman called Bhartrahari. So he says there are some people, he uses the word Jnana Lava Durvigdham. What is it? Experts. Durvigdham. Experts at misinterpretation. Whatever you do for them, they will misinterpret. And those who are unfortunate enough to have such people in their lives, they know what it means. Whatever you do, they will always misinterpret. They will never be happy. And Bhartari says that for such people, even Lord Brahmaji cannot make them happy. And therefore, this very important point is there, that this set of raga dvesha, raga for sukham and dvesha for dukham, it is natural. It does not need to be developed. You are born with it. It is part of your nature. What is natural cannot be given up. So no amount of free will, no amount of shastric study can make you like dukkha or hate sukha. And therefore, when Shastram talks about giving up of raga dvesha, remember, Shastram is talking about giving up of raga dveshas based on free will, but not giving up of this basic raga dvesha, which is what? Dvesha for dukham and raga for sukham. That you cannot do. No amount of study, no amount of understanding, no amount of vividhyasana can make you reverse that. So whenever Shastra talks about raga dvesha giving up, it is always talking about giving up raga dveshas which are acquired based on free will. Then you might ask, but they say accept dukkham. Fine. Accepting dukkham as part of my prarabdha is not to be taken as the same meaning as giving up dvesha for dukkham. Accepting dukkham as part of prarabdha is not giving up the dvesha for dukkham, because it cannot be given up. Accepting dukkham as part of prarabdha, it is just an intelligent response to a choiceless situation. And therefore Krishna says, Sahyogi, that kind of yogi, one who is committed to dharma and who is a jnana nishtha, paramamataha, is the greatest among all yogis. Therefore, the benefit of knowledge is what? The expansion of your mind and universal love. So most people think that the jnani who works for his own liberation, he is selfish. But remember that this Atma Jnanam, your mind is first withdrawn, but in anticipation of expansion. Therefore, self-knowledge is a withdrawal from finite likes and dislikes, finite identities, and then it expands to identify with the whole world. That's why we have the prayer, Mata tu Parvati Devi, Pita Devo Maheshwaraha, Pandava Shiva Bhaktascha, Swadesho Bhuvanatrayam. Swadesho Bhuvanatrayam. My Deshaha, my world, Swadeshaha, Bhuvanatrayam consists of all the three worlds. I belong to the whole creation, and every living being in that creation belongs to me. This is the result of Jnana-nishtha. And hence the jnani can never do any adharmic karma. Doing harm to others, remember, is always the outcome of a small I, the limited individual ego. Because I see another ego, I see differences. The jnani, on the other hand, has samashti ahankara, identification with the entire world. So samashti ahankara is not ahankara as big as a samashti, not ego as big as the universe. Okay, because Advaita makes you infinite. Dvaita makes you small. And therefore, this Advaita Jnani has identified with the entire universe. So he's got samashti ahankara. And remember that Dvaita always differentiates. And that is why it makes you small. And for the Dvaitin, there is a difference between Jiva and Jagat, which also makes the difference between Jiva and Ishvara appear real. And wherever there is a separate Jiva and a separate Jagat, there must be a separate Ishvara, creator. And if you have that vision that I am a Jiva, living in this terrible Jagat, which is always bothering me, and therefore I need a separate Ishvara as my person who rescues me, with that vision, your isolation is complete. Mortality is born, sorrow is born, fear is born, pain is born, greed is born. Samsara is firmly put on a good foundation. And in this verse, Krishna talks about the jnani who has broken this ajnanam bubble. Only Atma remains thereafter. And therefore, who is there to do harm to whom is the question. And that's why Krishna said in the last verse, he will never be away from me. So with this, we'll stop. Any questions?
Om Acharya ji.
Yes, please. Yes, Munmun, go ahead.
Om sir, so when we say that jnani doesn't harm anybody because he sees everybody as himself, but in the transactional world, if there is harm inflicted upon a jnani, then what should be his response? Like, should he just think of forgiveness? Or, for
Yes.
example, if the harm is inflicted upon him, then can he not take a stand of suppose going and putting an FIR and getting the person arrested? So, does he think that, no, this is like, I mean, where does the
jnani
person
will
draw the
take
line?
all actions as part of prarabdha. So from a jnani's point of view, he doesn't want to disturb the world. So there will be not much activity happening on his behalf. So you will not find him going and filing a FIR. He might make sure that it doesn't come in harm's way again. But the very effort of going and filing an FIR is reinforcing his individual ego, so that he won't do.
So if somebody harms a jnani, he should just let it happen.
He takes it as part of his prarabdha. That's the core vision of a jnani, that whatever pain I suffer is part of the prarabdha of the body. I as Atma am not affected at all.
But doesn't he think that this person can harm another person, and
That is not
therefore I
his
must
job.
stop?
That is not his job.
Is it
The
not
vision is
looked upon as weakness?
Yeah, it makes him a passive bearer of pain.
I can't hear you, Madhavi. What did you say?
No, she's
I
saying
said
that yeah, please go ahead.
it makes him, a passive person who's just bearing the pain and not taking any active response. I mean, we talk about response and reaction, but with this kind of thing, he's not even responding to the situation.
So he's not a person. No, that's the thing. You're all thinking the Jnani is a person. He's not. He's OC, not RC. That is why it's so difficult to understand this particular teaching, because whenever you say, what is he doing? You're talking about RC. But the Jnani doesn't consider himself RC. He considers himself OC. Believe me, it takes a very long time for this thing to understand. I might be saying it, you might be following my words, but for this to sink into your head and you appreciate without second thought that this is what Jnani will do, it will take ages. Because
So,
everybody is so used to thinking of himself as RC, right? Therefore, you think of the Jnani as the RC, and that is the mistake. Justice, injustice, they have no place in the world of OC. All belongs to RC only.
So Acharya ji, if a jnani does not hurt anybody, there are some situations where one person jnani has promised something to the other person, and due to some situation, some circumstances, he cannot make that promise because third person is getting unhappy. So in situation, where is the jnani rule?
Who is the person who has made a promise? Is the Jnani, is it the OC or the RC?
Yeah, it's OC.
You keep on thinking about this aspect. When I say Jnani, what do I mean? Enough of meditation on this will bring you to what it really means to say I am a Jnani, or to understand that you are Brahman. There are two aspects. One is Paramarthika, where you know that I am Atma, untouched by anybody. One is Vyavaharika, knowing that there is a body which is there, and I won't use the word I have the body. There is a body, that body is subject to Prarabdha, and let the Prarabdha carry on. It's a different matter if you are a Grahastha, if you have responsibilities, okay? There, then, you have to say that it is the Prarabdha of the Grahastha to take certain activities or actions to protect those who need his protection. So that's a totally different concept. To understand those two things takes a lot of, what they call, mananam. So don't use the word jnani when you talk about grahastha. You say grahastha jnani, but the prarabdha is taken over already. The moment you are bringing the body into the picture, or the body's activities into the picture, you are talking about prarabdha.
Ravi ji, may I contribute something to the answer?
Please, Mita, go ahead.
So this is from SPG. Once he clarified that the prarabdha for the jnani is of two kinds. That is the prarabdha karma phalam, which is the situation which happens to the jnani, and the second is the prarabdha vasana, which is what drives the jnani's reactions to different situations. So basically, both are prarabdha. It is not like a free will, driven by a personal agenda.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Meta, you've broken up. Can you repeat the last sentence?
Yeah. I think I lost the connection briefly. Could you hear everything?
Yes, I see what Meta has said is that the Jnani's responses to any situation, which is the situation is direct result of the prarabdha on the Jnani's body. And who responds? The Jnani's body responds. Normally, for a Ajnani, there is an element of free will in that response. But for a Jnani, the response itself is driven by prarabdha. And that's what she meant as prarabdha vasana. Have I enunciated correctly? Yes, that is what she
Yes,
meant.
exactly.
Which is why we say that from the Jnani's point of view is akarta. He does not have any free will at all. And that is why all these questions become capable of causing confusion. Because you are not talking about the Jnani the moment you talk about his response. Does it make sense, Munmun?
Yes, I'm just trying to still like assimilate and understand. So, but whatever I understood in these years is that Vasana is not something that is always like free will is something that we should use our intellect and see what is right in a situation and not go by our Vasana, because based on my Vasana, I might do something wrong. But my intellect and free will should kind of take over the Vasana and lead me to the right direction.
That's exactly the point we made. All that comes into play because you have identification with your own body, because of which conflicting or harmful decisions can be made, and that is why you use free will. Jnani is not capable of that anymore, and therefore he doesn't have a free will. His will is aligned with that of Ishvara. He doesn't have a free will anymore at all. And therefore, whatever responses come to a situation, that is also basically his prarabdha only. He responds because of prarabdha. He meaning his body.
Om Acharya ji,
Yeah.
can we so infer that when the Jnani has a karta prarabdha, it is because of the prarabdha of the others that
No,
he comes in
no.
contact with?
No. Prarabdha is basically your own body.
Mhm.
See,
Okay.
I don't know if you remember that there are two types of karma phalam. One is we call prarabdha, which affects you as a bhokta, and one we call vasana, which affects you as a karta. Both are
Karta.
prarabdha only. And that is what, when you say that Jnani acts only from prarabdha, whatever experiences he undergoes, pain, pleasure, it is from the point of view of prarabdha of karma, as karma phalam. Whatever response his body and mind give, that is from the point of view of prarabdha as vasana. And that's what Meda meant. For the Jnani, you cannot attribute free will.
Thank you.
The Vasana, I'm sorry to take more time on this, but Vasana is habitual thinking pattern.
Vasana is an impression made by some karma. And because it becomes a habitual thinking pattern, it sort of modifies your response. It creates or modifies a response. That is why it's prarabdha only, but called vasana. What is prarabdha? It's a result of karma. It's karma phalam.
So if the Jnani's prarabdha vasana is to like put somebody in jail or to take revenge, that is also a thinking pattern, right?
Of the body, mind complex, which is not the jnani. This is why I'm saying, when you say jnani, you are excluding the body mind sense complex. The jnani's body mind sense complex may behave according to prarabdha. Largely, it will not hurt anybody. But if it does, then it is from the point of view of the vasana. You're all confusing yourself because you consistently think of the jnani as a human being. Jnani is equal to OC. See,
Okay, thank
It'll take time. I told you, just go with the flow. Sooner or later, one fine day you'll say, aha, that is what Raviji meant on that day. When that aha
you. Wait
comes,
for that
then
day.
you got it. Okay, so thank you for patience. With this, we'll stop. Om Purnamadav Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnam Eva Vasishyate Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Om Tat Sat. Om Namah Shivaya.
Om
Thank
Tat
you for your
Sat.
patience.
Om Namah Shivaya. Thank you.
Namah Shivaya. Thank you.